All right, so today we're looking at resistance training. We are going to cover the sort of resistance section for our youth clients, right? So like this is going to be, when we look at a blank OPT template, and we have covered the warm-up section, where you address like the flexibility issues and cardiovascular exercise. We've covered the core balance reactive section where we sort of get the movement prep in, then the speed, agility, and quickness section, we're really like diving into like athleticism and things like that. But today we're looking at sort of the meat and potatoes, right? Like this is really the main section where we are kind of getting into the if you want to work on like chest day or back day or leg day or anything like that, right? Like this is the main sort of resistance section. So when you talk about like training splits, usually your workouts are sort of unofficially named after whatever it is you're working on. Like me yesterday, I did a total body workout because it's sort of a gentle deload week for me to make sure that I don't overtrain or anything like that. But like, next week it'll be, back to that classic like upper body split, then lower body, then my cardio day, then upper, and then lower, then cardio again. So like my training split there is like a 2-day split twice per week, or I could do like a 4-day split. I guess technically it's a 4-day split just because it has a slightly different warm up on both days, but it's essentially the same. So when we're talking about training splits, really a lot of times we're referring to what's going on here in the resistance section, right? And so we're going to dive in and sort of break that resistance section down today and make sure that it's really clear, so that we can, design some fun programs here. So introducing things, there's a lot of like sort of myths that are associated with youth training. So we're going to talk about like some of those myths today, especially because like a lot of times it's like, oh, well, it's important to have kids play games and do cardio and stuff, but it doesn't make any sense to have them do like strength training because like, it's going to cause like stunted growth or things like that. And we'll talk about how there's actually no evidence to suggest that that's true in any capacity. We'll also talk about how like proper training is obviously important because that's going to ensure that we keep people safe, and also proper training is going to be more effective, which is, if you can't convince somebody to do something to keep themselves safe, at least you can try to convince them, that it's like, well, it doesn't work, like that's like my parents sometimes. Like my parents, when I'm trying to like convince them of health things, they always want the best version of things, and like they never take care of themselves. Like it's like, hey, this thing that you're doing is kind of unhealthy. And it's like, well, it's supposed to work. And it's like, well, it doesn't. And then that's the thing that kind of convinces them. And then we want to talk about how like, proper training can obviously improve your clients, athleticism and strength and things like that. So objectives today: understand the benefits of youth resistance training and dispel any myths and understand those general guidelines so that we can implement really good and effective programs. So there's sort of two main myths. There's I'm sure there's more out there, but like because there's so much misinformation. But like there's sort of two main sort of key myths that are associated with like youth fitness training, right? The first one is that injuries are going to be more common amongst youth clients, but that isn't necessarily true. If you think about like breaking that down, that's like saying injuries are more common amongst seniors or injuries are more common amongst the obese. It doesn't matter like what population you're training, as long as you are training them properly. The risk level is the same for literally everyone. It's not like, like walking into a gym. Here's the thing. Like I'll be the first to admit, like walking into a gym is an inherently higher risk place, right? Like, it's a room full of heavy stuff where people have headphones in and they're focused on their own thing. Like I am great in a weight room. I've spent my entire career in a weight room, and yet, I got injured. I broke my hand trying to help somebody one time, because like I saw that they were losing their balance, right? Like that's a very Sure. Like I'll be the first to admit, gyms are a more high risk area than, simply sitting on your couch. But to say that like you are more likely to get injured because of the gym, it's kind of an irresponsible way to like frame it. It's like it may be a higher risk area, but like when you walk into a higher risk area, you pay more attention, you're more careful, right? Like, everywhere is a high risk area. You walking into your garage, if you didn't clean up after it, you don't have the lights on, is going to be a high risk area. Getting out of bed in the morning and forgetting that you left your shoes next to the bed and tripping over them puts you at high risk. As long as you do things the way that you are supposed to do them, it's no riskier for a youth than it is for a senior, than it is for an adult, than it is for literally anybody. Training with proper technique is always going to protect us. But yes, how often do you hear about somebody getting injured in the gym? All the time, right? People are like, oh, I threw my back out at the gym or this or that. And it's like, those things don't happen because deadlifts are dangerous. They happen because lifting anything the wrong way is dangerous, right? Lifting with improper technique is always going to be the same level of dangerous for everyone. And so, yeah, absolutely. It's something to for sure be aware of, but to frame it and to say it that like kids are more likely to get injured than adults are isn't really true. And again, like I'll play both sides of this argument here. I understand where it's coming from. Youths generally don't have the same attention spans that adults do, right? And so maybe they're not going to be as technical about how they do things. They're going to goof around, things like that. That isn't the gym, right? Again, that's a faulty trainer. If you don't pay attention to your client, yeah, they could end up getting injured. So it has nothing to do with them being youths and everything to do with like, training people the way that we should be training them. And then secondly, is myth number 2 is that resistance training will halt the development. It'll stunt your youth's growth, right? There is literally no evidence to suggest that that's true. And if you think about how we understand biology, it doesn't even make any sense if you actually think about it. Like stunted growth, like when I was a kid, for instance, my mom, so this is so weird. I was a kid who liked coffee. Like a little kid, like I was like a really little kid who liked my mom's coffee, because turns out the way my mom drinks coffee is just like lots of cream and lots of sugar. She like coffee flavored sugar milk, like that's what my mom drinks. Which is ironic because that's how I take my coffee today. I should say it's ironic, or it's perfectly exactly designed that way. Like, my choices and habits have kind of led me down the same road. But she used to leave. The other thing is like it was always cold because she would leave it sitting out. She would like be busy because my mom's just like constantly busy. Especially when I was a kid. And so she would be so swamped and overwhelmed, and she'd be doing stuff all day, and she'd finally get back to her coffee, and it would just be gone. Like little kid me was just like, like, and I'd be running around like crazy. And my mom, she grew up, long ago when it was like, everybody was always worried about like a stunting, like a youth's growth, right? And so she like went to the doctor and she's like, she's like, what the hell? He keeps drinking my coffee. Like, I'm so worried he's not going to develop properly. And the doctor's like, look, like worst case scenario, he's going to, build up a little bit of a caffeine tolerance, which then if he doesn't get caffeine, he'll get like a little bit of a headache and he'll be cranky. But the idea that it's going to stop his cells from growing, it's not altering his DNA. It's not doing anything like that, like, now I will say, like, if you want to go like real fringe, I will try my hardest to find a way to allow like something like caffeine to stunt someone's growth. Sure, there is some minor evidence in very fringe research that has been done where caffeine consumption at super, 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 super high levels has been shown to slightly lower bone density because there's sort of an affinity for calcium to get drawn to caffeine. An incredible, like, but the doses for things like that are probably off the charts. So the idea that you're going to get that from a cup of coffee is completely ridiculous. So does it, my mom was so afraid. I actually remember sitting in the doctor's appointment with my mom while she was like talking about this, and he was like, look, if you're worried about it, switch to tea, which is why my mom drank tea for a few years, because I was a little nuisance. So that's sort of a myth, right? Like the idea of stunted growth. Now, the things that can lead to stunted growth, obviously, like malnutrition, absolutely. When you see, for instance, like when you see in like sometimes you'll see like developing nations, you'll see like pictures of like malnourished individuals who are not like necessarily developing the way they're supposed to. You often see like sort of that distended stomach look. That's actually coming from like actually like different like bloating and like developmental issues in like the digestive system that kind of causes everything to kind of move downwards, which is why that actually sort of like looks kind of similar in most people when we see that malnourishment. But again, there's a huge stark difference between malnourishment and like this idea of stunted growth. The only thing that's going to cause stunted growth are like hormonal disturbances through like maybe like a pituitary disorder or something like that, which is honestly going to halt like every version of puberty and things. Or like I said, like malnutrition, right? There's literally no evidence to suggest that like lifting weights is going to have some kind of benefit, some kind of drawback there. And like I said, I pulled this picture up earlier, but there was kind of a famous story years ago about Hercules, this kid bodybuilder, right? And he was like a really muscular little kid, and everybody, the internet went crazy and released all these stories about how like he was like really unhealthy as an adult and he had like stunted growth and things like that. And it's like, no, they caught up with him like years later. He did get out of it. It's like one of those things where like his parents made him bodybuild, or like, I don't know about made him, but like his parents were really into it. So then like when he became an adult, he was like, yeah, I just didn't like it anymore. Like, so he kind of grew into like just having sort of a normal, being sort of a normal, like, in his 20s guy. He's still in relatively good shape, like, in fact, I'm sure he's in great shape. But like he definitely did not like carry on to be like an adult bodybuilder or anything like that, which also makes sense, so kids are always going to be a little rebellious, but so there's literally no evidence here, guys. There's the only thing that's going to happen from like a youth strength training is that it's going to have like positive benefits similar to that of like an adult. Benefits associated with resistance training that we know of, we see improved motor skills. We talked yesterday all about improving proprioception and things like that. You can still get some of that from even just resistance training. Like, you see people like look up programs on the internet and stuff, right? Like when you, let me see if I can tap into your guys' experience a little bit here. But how many of you guys were a little surprised when you first started looking at like the program design side of things from like NASM's perspective? We started like incorporating very specific warm-ups, and then we have like the movement prep section, which is pretty unique compared to like what you see in sort of traditional workouts. Seems a little weird, right? Like not every workout's going to have stuff like that. But that is all about sort of the activation side of things. If we think about like how we warm up, we sort of deactivate muscles that are overactive and firing when they're not supposed to, and we use the movement prep section to get muscles that we want to kind of be a little bit hyper turned on during our workouts. We use the movement prep section to make that happen, right? Like if I want my brain to be like firing really quick so that when I go to do like a big explosive heavy lift, right, I want to make sure that like the reactive parts of my body are a little turned on, a little explosive already, right? So or like if I want to make sure that like I'm doing a really heavy deadlift, I want to make sure my core is turned on. If I do a little bit of core work before I get onto the weight, before I get onto the weight room floor, that little bit of core work is going to make sure that my underactive muscles are firing and they're already awake, and that's what movement prep is for. So we know that that's going to have very positive benefits on like my motor skills. The same thing is true in a resistance section, right? By like lifting heavy weights and things like that. Or it's going to improve our body composition, which we talked about like the mind body connection with like our youth clients. A lot of like youths tend to put a lot of emphasis on how they, how they look and fit in with their peers and stuff. And so that can not only improve body composition, but they can also improve like their psychosocial well-being. They're going to feel better about themselves because they're able to perform a certain way, they're able to look a certain way, and things like that. And don't get me wrong, I don't think people should be putting too much emphasis in how they look, but like there's a sort of a difference between like, being like really superficial about things and then just taking care of yourself. We are through getting youths exposed to like resistance training, exposing them to the habit of taking care of yourself early. And then it's also going to improve bone mineral density. Remember, lifting big heavy weights cause, your bone, this big long lever, is being pulled on both ends. Like maybe there's a dumbbell over here and then the muscles pulling on this end, right? That's causing the bone to kind of flex and bend, and it creates little microscopic fractures, which triggers your immune system to develop that bone tissue and actually make it more dense, which is great, right? That's an incredible benefit to have, particularly weight-bearing exercise, things like lifting weights, running, and things like that, swimming, and resistance bands and cycling. Those things are really good as well. They don't necessarily have the same bone mineral density benefits just because they're not quite as sort of working against gravity. It doesn't trigger the same way for reasons that are sort of above my pay grade. I'm actually not 100% certain why that's not the same, but that is something that we do sometimes kind of see there. And then it's also going to lower our risk of cardiovascular disease because your resistance training can absolutely be similar to cardio. You just have to do it the right way. And it can obviously, and arguably most importantly, help us develop a resistance to injury, by knowing how to move your shoulders through a full range of motion in whatever plane that you happen to be moving in, or to be able to move your knees, your hips, your ankles properly rather than improperly, means that like, joints are going to slide, bones are going to slide the way that they're supposed to. Look at like patellofemoral syndrome, right? You guys remember patellofemoral syndrome is where that kneecap, that patella, just doesn't slide in the groove the way it's supposed to, right? There's a little groove here, and your patella has to slide up that groove whenever your knee is bending, right? And so ideally, it should have an equal amount of space here the whole time. But if this patella gets dragged over here because one muscle is really tight and another muscle is really weak, well, now that bone's going to start dragging on other bone. Hard tissue on hard tissue. It sort of looks like this, right? You can see this is not gliding the way it's supposed to. There's a gap over here, which is not good. And there's a grinding over here, which is obviously not good, and so like by making sure that you're strength training and developing everything equally and, recruiting your muscles the way you're supposed to, you're going to prevent that kind of stuff from happening. So I think I've sold the concept, hopefully everybody in here is like, yeah, well, I want to start training kids, hopefully we're all sort of, that's my sales pitch for dispelling any of the crap myths that are out there and sort of getting the idea that youths need to be active. General guidelines for how to do this. Generally, we want to perform we want to perform youth resistance training anywhere from about 2 to 3 days per week. Remember, we want to get kids active like 60 minutes a day. That's great. Like that is going to fit very well within like playing games a couple times a week and getting a little bit of strength training sessions in with a little bit of a day of rest in between each session so that, they don't get sort of overly sore or anything like that. We love that day of rest in between, certain muscle groups, which is where we do want to be pretty specific about like how we sort of structure our workouts, right? So we're going to combine certain exercises together. We love good upper body movements and lower body movements paired together. We also love to incorporate a lot of core training even into our resistance section, even though that core training is often, sort of used in the movement prep section. One thing that I like to do is I love to throw a little bit of core work between like an upper body, lower body superset. One of my favorite ways to kind of structure things. Hold on a second. I need to actually do this at some point. One of my favorite ways to sort of like structure things out when I'm like writing out like a workout. If I'm in the resistance section, so I'll do like an upper body exercise. We'll say like prisoner squats or something like that, and then I'll do a lower body exercise. I flip these. I'll do a lower body exercise, and I'll do an upper body exercise. Maybe something like a single leg shoulder press, right? And then I'll pair that up with like a plank, and that is my rest, right? So maybe I would do like 3 sets of each of those things, 20 reps for each of those, you know, or we'll say 10 each because it is a single leg. And then we'll say like 30 seconds, right? And then the tempo, we'll put like slow for each of these. So that one's an isometric. And then I'll put like 0 seconds of rest. And then I could put 0 seconds of rest right there, because that little bit of planking isn't necessarily rest, but it is, you know, not associated with the leg. So now by the time I get back to my prisoner squats, I did some shoulder stuff, which didn't involve my legs. I did some plank stuff, which didn't involve my legs. And so these are fairly well recovered. So if this is like, you know, if I'm going for like a high calorie burn routine, I will often take this sort of like concept here and copy it and use it a couple different times, right? So then like later down the road, like let's say, so that's prisoner squats. Let's say I went with something like, you know, switching parts of the body here. Let's go with like a, let's go with like a single leg Romanian deadlift. We'll go 3 sets of 10 each with a slow tempo, 0 seconds of rest. And then we will go with, let's go with like push-ups, right? 3 for 20, slow, 0 seconds of rest. And then let's go with like a Superman, right? Because that has nothing to do with any of those. And we'll go 30 seconds, isometric, and 0 seconds of rest again. And then lastly, I want to get like just a little bit more of the body here. I'm just doing that so that I can. So then if I go with like an X band walk, you know, that lateral movement for my legs, right? We'll go with like 3 sets of like 20 each on that one, just because like it tends to be kind of a small rep kind of thing. Let's get like a kneeling resistance band row, 3 sets, 20 reps, slow, 0 seconds. And then a little bit of core stuff here. Let's go with like a side plank, 3 sets, 30 seconds each, isometric, right? So if I had something like this, if I had a program like this, right? And I pair that up with like a little bit of movement prep and, you know, warm up and things like that. This is a pretty good stabilization routine, right? That prisoner squat could be made more difficult by putting my client on a Bosu ball later on, right? You know, we've got a single leg shoulder press here. We got push-ups. This could be done with hands on a ball. So now it's like very unstable. The kneeling resistance band row is obviously very unstable. So like, you know, and this is all very high repetition stuff, right? Which is fitting very well within the stabilization side of things, because that should be somewhere between like 12 and 20 repetitions. And I went with 0 seconds of rest for the most part. So like, you're going to have these like, you know, you're going to have these like, you know, kind of high intensity. It's like you just kind of go through that circuit pretty quickly, as fast as you can without taking any rest. And then maybe I put like a coaching tip in here where it's like, you know, we tell our client, all right, well, we're going to get a little bit of cardio in here. Oops. Insert row above, where we just go, all right, let's go hit the treadmill for, you know, 1 set. And we'll say like, you know, 2 minutes fast, you know, rest doesn't really apply to this, right? Try to get as out of breath as possible in 2 minutes, right? So if we did something like that and we put that in between after every one of these like little circuits, right? And it looks something kind of like this now, you'll notice I really don't even need to have an SAQ or a core balance reactive section. This is sort of a self-contained workout that incorporates plenty of core work, plenty of balance work, Doesn't have so much reactive stuff. There's actually, I can't, we don't have any reactive stuff actually built into this version, but you can see like I've got a very well-rounded cardio routine incorporated with like a little bit of strength training and a little bit of a traditional cardio. So this is a very much different approach here than we sort of see in sort of a traditional OPT template, but it's a great total body routine that does incorporate a lot of core strength. So I wanted to kind of point that out because sometimes like we get stuck in the idea of just putting all of our core work up here in the activation section. And I am a big fan of doing that, but you don't always have to do that. Okay, so that kind of sets us up to talk about how to take our clients through an overall sort of workout here. So when it comes to the OPT model, generally for resistance training, guys, you are going to make that resistance a little bit harder in a couple, making sure I don't goof this up and get way ahead of my making sure I don't get ahead of my slides here. When you're making this harder, right, generally for youths, we are focusing on phases 1, phase 2, and phase 5. So if we look at that OPT model, we see that we've got our sort of 3 different levels here. We've got the stabilization level, the strength level, and the power level. Within that, we see sort of like 5 individual phases, right? Stabilization pairs with stabilization, powers with power, but we've got sort of different versions of strength here. Now, again, we kind of talked about this at the beginning. Youths are not particularly good at anaerobic exercise, right? Like they just don't have like a very large capacity for like muscular growth. So spending your time on like hypertrophy, I mean, obviously, like, we saw it, like that little kid Hercules, like he had like big muscles, like he was a muscular dude. So he did hypertrophy training, right? But you can also see as soon as he sort of like stopped doing that as much, by 16, he had really slimmed down. Because like he didn't continue on with it, and his body was like, well, we don't need to have lots of big muscle, we're a youth, right? We are more focused on cardiovascular exercise. So hypertrophy and max strength, the energy system necessary to sort of support this style of training just doesn't really fit very well with our youth clients. It just isn't the style of training that is most effective. You're not getting the most bang for your buck, basically. The only strength side, the only phase that we're going to sort of incorporate with like the strength level is really going to be phase 2 here, that strength endurance side of things. This applies very well to our youth clients because it's still very high repetition. You do that superset technique, which keeps your time under tension really, really high. And so because that time under tension is so high, that does make it much more challenging, which is makes it much more challenging through like duration. And that duration is something that youths are great at, right? Remember, they're really good at the aerobic energy system. So the longer you can be under tension, the more that you're sort of playing to their strengths, but that being said, what if they actually legitimately get stronger? Well, yeah, you can absolutely increase the load by maybe 5 to 10% every workout or set or whenever it's appropriate, right? So like one of the things that I do whenever I'm doing like heavy powerlifting routines is I will between week 1 and week 2 or whatever it happens to be, like when I'm trying to increase the load for my upper body movements, I'll just go up by 5 pounds. I just go grab the little 2.5s and slap them on both sides. But with lower body movements, I try to go up by 10 pounds every time I go for an increase. And that sort of like increases the load from that like sort of 5 to 10% range for the most part. Sometimes it needs to be a little bit more than that, but same thing is true of like our youth clients, right? You go from maybe 5 pounders to like 8 pounders to 10 pounders to 12s, until eventually they're strong enough where it's like, all right, yeah, we got to go from 15s to 20s instead of 17 and a half. Yes, so you are going to increase the load through like increasing weight if the focus is their strength. Then yeah, that's how we're going to make it harder. But there's other ways to make things harder as well, right? You're always going to make things harder by progressing the appropriate method. Now, if you are in the stabilization level, right? How do we make things harder in stabilization, guys? Pop quiz for you. How do we make things harder in stabilization? Your client is supposed to do between 12 and 20 reps. You write a routine that has 12 reps. They come in and they do 20. That means they are absolutely crushing it. The exercise is a little bit too easy. How do we make it harder? They're in the stabilization level.
Due to tempo, increase the tempo.
Increase the reps.
Well, we could decrease the tempo a little bit, but let's say they have them set at a tempo already. And you're right, Bay, we did increase the reps, but now we're at the maximum reps. We're already at 20. So now it's like, we don't have anywhere to go with the reps. So how do we make it harder now?
Make it heavier. If they're doing weights, increase the weights, but shorter reps.
Maybe we could make it heavier. But remember, our client's in the stabilization level, right? So is our focus to get stronger, or is our focus to develop more stability?
Stability.
Right? So we're trying to make it a little bit more unstable. So the ways that we can make things harder in the stabilization level is we can make the exercises more unstable. And this is where yesterday I mentioned I want you guys to have memorized the equipment progression, right? It goes from like balance beam to half foam roller to balance beam to half foam roller to Air X pad to Dynadisc, right? That's the sort of order of equipment progression. Well, there is also a lower body and an upper body movement progression, and this applies to the stabilization level. So you're going to move, if it's a lower body exercise, let's say it's like a lunge, right? You're going to move from 2 legs in a stable environment to a staggered stance in a stable environment to a single leg version in a stable environment. And then you're going to sort of move into the unstable stuff, and you're going to repeat that process. You're going to go back to 2 legs, unstable, staggered stance, unstable, single leg, unstable. So it might start with like body weight squats, and then your client is killing it and they get really good at it. So then we switch it to like a split squat, just sort of similar to a lunge. And then eventually we go into like a single leg squat, which is pretty freaking tough. Then we put them back to 2 legs. So we go back to a normal squat, but now they're doing it on like a piece of equipment that's really wobbly, maybe like a Bosu ball. So 2 legs unstable, split squats, unstable, and then eventually like they're doing a freaking single leg squat on that Bosu ball. So that is if our client's in stabilization. Now, if our client's in the strength level, make it heavier, right? If our client's in the power level, we need to make it more explosive. We got to keep our levels consistent in our head and remember the concepts of like what each level is trying to do. Remember, the stabilization level is all about developing stability, right? The strength level is all about gaining strength. Why are you doing that? And the power level is all about gaining power, right? So this is all about like learning how to move. This is all about force production, and this is about rate of force production. So if I had a client who gets to the maximum number of reps in stabilization, I'm going to make the exercise harder now, because I'm going to always make things harder when my client hits the max number of reps. And I'm going to make it harder by making it unstable. If my client's in the strength level and they get to the maximum number of reps and I need to make it harder, make it heavier. And if my client's in the power level and I need to make it harder, I'm going to make them throw something a little bit more heavy, or I'm going to make them have to jump a little bit higher or jump a little bit further. They're going to have to use like more power and more explosiveness to sort of overcome that. And the same thing goes for our upper body progressions here as well. Let's say your client is doing a stability ball chest press, right? Remember this exercise right here. Absolutely not watching that. What is that silly video? Seriously, is there not like a NASA? I'm surprised the NASA one didn't come up first. Wow. Do they not have a demo for that? That's crazy. All right, whatever. Oh, good. Jillian Michaels, my mortal enemy. So if we're doing a chest press, like we're doing this exercise right here, right? This is a stabilization level chest exercise. It's not a bench press, which would be a strength level chest exercise. It's not a medicine ball, throw, which would be, a power level chest exercise. This is on an unstable environment, right? So I need to do in the stabilization level somewhere between 12 and 20 reps. And then my client, they start at 12, they get stronger the next week, they come in, they do 15, they feel really good the week after that, and they do all 20, and they're like, that felt easy. And you're like, all right, let's make it harder. How do we make it harder in the stabilization level? We don't just go up on the weight, right? Because our goal is increased stability. Our goal is not necessarily increased like force production. That's the strength level. So we are going to go through an upper body progression here. We're going to go from 2 arms in a stable environment. So that might be something kind of like this, to alternating arms, which is going to look something like this. Because what that's going to do is that's going to create a little bit of asymmetry, right? Because now this, if I'm in this position here, this weight on this side is off to the side over here. So it's pulling me this way. And the weight over here is close to my center, which makes it, now I feel like I'm going to tip. So I have to strengthen my core to keep myself in one position. So I go with an alternating chest press, right? And then once I'm really, really good at that, I can go into a single arm version where I actually drop one of those dumbbells and then I'm only lifting with one side. And now I'm really asymmetric, right? Now I'm really trying to get pulled to one way. So I really have to use my core to stay nice and stable. And then eventually we can do like a single arm with a full rotation. So you can go up and then give it like a rotation and come back down. And now it's like, I got to recruit my core through the whole movement. And then we would repeat that whole process in unstable versions, right? We would go with 2 arms in an unstable environment, alternating arms in an unstable environment, single arms unstable, single arm with rotation unstable. So, maybe I have a stabilization level client who can't even do a stability ball chest press first. Well, let's start them in the stable version, right? We start them here. But then once they're able to do that, we get them onto the ball and we start them with 2 arms and then eventually alternating arms, and then eventually 1 arm and then 1 arm with a rotation. So this is another progression, guys. Both of these, you will want to have these memorized. Actually, we were talking about this last night. Thomas, you were in class with Robert last night, and he was asking about this. Yesterday, when we were going through the equipment variation, Robert, who is a former student of mine, who has already passed his NASM, but he likes to sit on the evening classes sometimes. He was saying when on his test, they asked him what the appropriate progression order was. I can't remember if he said it was lower body or upper body, but he got a multiple choice question that was, put these things in the right order, and it's like, you will want to have both of these and the equipment progression up in your noggin. So that is how we make things harder in the stabilization level, right? We make it harder by making the exercises more unstable, right? So our clients are going to do anywhere from 1 to 3 sets if it's a youth client, 6 to 15 repetitions if they're trying to develop muscular strength, or 3 to 6 repetitions if they're trying to develop power, which is going to correspond with what we see in sort of our general OPT rules, right? We go over to the resistance section over here. In the stabilization level, that's 12 to 20 reps for adults, so a little bit different. And then for strength endurance, you'll notice we've got between 8 and 12 repetitions, 6 and 12 repetitions, right? 1 to 5. So there's definitely a little bit of a difference for our youths. I actually don't want you guys to pay too much attention to these numbers right over here, because this is the youth numbers. We want to have memorized the adult numbers, right? 12 to 20 reps for stabilization, 8 to 12 reps for strength endurance, 6 to 12 reps for hypertrophy, 1 to 5 reps for maximum strength, and 8 to 10 reps for power. Those are the numbers that we want to have up here. If you go to take your youth test, yeah, you'll need to memorize different numbers, but our priority is to do the regular. Okay, so Oh, and then one other thing is like there is the sort of traditional stuff with youths. You feel free to do dumbbells, barbells, using just lifting plates or getting on machines. We're not super anti-machine or anything. You know, all of those traditional forms of resistance training are going to be absolutely appropriate for our youths. But there's also alternative forms like resistance bands, medicine balls, battle ropes, sandbags, bodyweight calisthenics. All of these pieces of equipment are also really good. And what's great about them is that they can be transported very, very, very easily. You can throw these kind of things into a car and travel around, and kids love working out outdoors. So incorporating a little bit of resistance training, a little bit of medicine ball throws and battle ropes and things like that into like a boot camp style training is a great way to get kids to engage in a little bit of strength training while having like a really, really, really good time. How you guys feeling so far? Any questions? Did we clear up? Does that make sense why we progress things that way?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Cool. So let's take a look at the OPT model, right? Let's take a look at our sort of overall resistance section here, right? So again, today we're focused on just looking at the levels. We're not breaking down too many phases today. But if we look at sort of the resistance training side of things, right? It's going to follow the same OPT model that we normally follow, right? We've got our stabilization adaptations, all about stability, our strength adaptations, which are all about strength, and our power adaptations, which are all about power, right? So if we've got this sort of foundational level, right, like this is the rock in which we build our temple, like this is the foundation for everything that we have. It's our starting point, right? With stabilization exercises, you are going to choose quote unquote resistance stabilization exercises. Now remember, the resistance section is where you're either picking like total body exercises or chest or back, shoulders, biceps, triceps, or legs. So you can see these are all of our choices, right? In the same way that like core stabilization exercises was literally just like a list of like core stabilization, and like balance stabilization was balance stabilization, reactive is reactive, right? But resistance can be anything. You could have total body day, you could have chest day, back day, shoulder day, bicep day, leg, if you want to have bicep day, leg, triceps, or legs, right? However you want to sort of split up, set up your training splits, right? So maybe, if I were building like a workout, right? Let's say I'm going to just actually, let's say I were setting up like a training split, right? Insert table. Let's go with like we'll say it's a 4-day split, right? We'll say chest, back, shoulders, and legs, right? And I'd probably actually move this over here if I was doing it this way. I don't love this training split, but let's just say this is how I'm setting it up, right? Well, now let's say I'm going to pick, sort of 3 primary movements for each of these. For each of these exercises, right? So for my chest day, let's say it's the bench press. For the back day, let's say it's bent over row. I'm being really basic here. These are not stabilization versions, by the way. I'm just sort of setting up a training split. And for leg day, it's a barbell squat. For shoulder day, it's a military press, right? And then let's say I go down. Actually, what if I go down? Hey. So let's say I go down here and then it's like, okay, I need an accessory movement. So an incline, chest press, let's say a chin up. Let's go with a deadlift, and let's go with a lateral raise, right? And then lastly, we'll fill this out with like a chest fly. Let's go with, I don't know, seated row. Let's go with like walking lunges, and let's go with scaption. Bent over. Actually, yeah, we'll go reverse fly. Perfect. Right. So there we go. Right now, I've kind of got a full setup here. And if I were doing like, if I were doing this as like a routine, I could throw this into like a resistance section for like each day, right? But let's say I don't want to do it this way. Let's say like, I've got a client who wants to do like a 2-day split. Maybe these are the exercises that I really like, but they want to work out 4 days per week, and they want to do like an upper, a workout A situation and workout B, and then they go back to workout A and workout B again. Well, now all I got to do is just sort of rearrange things a little bit. Maybe workout A is chest and back. And then workout B is legs and shoulders. And then I just copy that whole thing. I accidentally need these bullet points. I thought that would look cool, and now I'm regretting it. Maybe it looks something kind of like this now, right? That's a totally different training split, but these are also very, very different volumes, right? These are very, very different volumes for how I'm doing this. Let's say for like this version here, this was maybe like 4 sets by like 8 reps, right? So that means I'm getting 4, 8, 12 sets for my chest in one workout. It's actually pretty good, right? But over here, if I did 4 by 8 each time, that's going to be 24 sets per week, right? Which is kind of a lot. So instead, maybe it's something like 3 by 12 might work a little bit better, because then I'm getting 3, 6, 9 sets, and then that's going to be 12, 15, 18. For each body part, I'm really not going over 20 sets. We ideally, when we're picking our training volume, want to be somewhere between 10 and 20 sets per body part per week. So if I'm looking at chest stuff, this would be 4, 8, 12. For back stuff is 4, 8, 12. Legs is 4, 8, 12. Shoulders is 4, 8, 12. And then for legs here, if I do this version, this is 3, 6, 9 plus another 9, so that's 18. So in both versions, these are really good. But if I did 4 by 8 here, that would actually be 24 sets per week, which is kind of too much. I'm risking overtraining there. So that's another way that we sort of want to look at our training volume, right? Is we want to consider like things like that. So there's a million different ways that you can set up your training splits, right? You can have days where you're doing all of this in one workout, like total body routines. Oh man, I kind of regret actually closing that. I wish I would have kept that open. Let's say I want to do like 2 total body routines, right? Maybe I do the bench press, and then I do, I pair that with here's 3 total body routines in one day, right? So we do the bench press one for our chest exercise. We had the incline chest press for the other one, and then we had what was that? The chest fly, right? And then for my back exercises, bent over row, chin ups, and then seated row. And then it was for shoulder, or for legs, it was barbell squat, deadlift, walking lunges. For my shoulders, it was military press, lateral reverse squat. Okay, so now what if my workouts look like this, right? Now it's like I've got workout A, workout B, and workout C. Now I'm hitting every part of my body, each time, right? Like I'm hitting each part of my body a little bit every single day, like, or at least, my 3 days per week here, right? So that's a different approach. That's a total body routine. This is probably what's going to work best for most stabilization level clients. And this is probably what's going to work best for most youth clients, because like, we don't really like massively hit any one particular body part every single day. Instead, we kind of evenly distribute it out a little bit, and we continue hitting those muscles multiple times per week. And I'd probably have time to do more. If I did like, if this was again like 4 sets by 8 repetitions, well, that's 4, 8, 12 over the course of a week. That's not bad, right? But let's say like I wanted to sort of like double this up and I wanted to do, you know, just another circuit after this in workout A and workout B, right? And so I would just kind of copy these and replace them with different versions, right? Like, you know, on workout A, it's like the bench press and, oh, I don't know, let's machine chest press. I kind of come up with 3, you know, versions of everything. It's going to take too long. But imagine I just replaced these exercises, and now I've set up like a new training volume, right? If I did 3 sets here and 3 sets here, that's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 sets. Perfect. So there's a million different ways to set up your training splits. I do want to show a video on how to sort of like look at this. This guy does a really terrific breakdown of how to set up a training split. Love me some Jeremy Ether. I think this guy rocks. I've been following him, like, I don't know how I came across him like when he was brand spanking new. And I was like, I like subscribed to him. I was like, oh, this guy makes it on YouTube. And now he's like massive. All right, here we go.
Biggest decisions you have to make when starting out in the gym is choosing what workout split you're going to use, or in other words, simply figuring out how you're going to group your exercises throughout the week. For example, when I first started going to the gym, I used what was popularized in fitness magazines and what everyone at the gym seemed to be doing, the bro split, which simply involves training each muscle group once per week with high volume within each workout. And after a few years of this style of training, as you can see in this photo of me at I believe 18 or 19 years old, I definitely made good progress. But looking back with the knowledge I now have, it begs the question as to whether or not I would have progressed noticeably faster had I used a different or better workout routine than the bro split. And honestly, I think there's a good chance I would have. And as for what I would have done instead and recommend you do as well, let's first take a look at our options. One popular option is to train certain groups of muscles together during each workout. The upper-lower split is a good example of this and involves training your upper body together and your lower body together. Another similar concept is the push-pull leg split, where again, multiple muscles are trained together each workout. Another popular option, which is basically the opposite of the bro split, is a full body routine, in which you train all of your muscles during your workouts, mainly through the use of compound exercises. And these other workout splits are likely superior to the bro split for a variety of reasons. The main reason though, as explained in my training frequency video and as outlined in this 2016 meta-analysis by Schoenfeld and colleagues, is that when volume is matched, training each muscle at least 2 times per week results in significantly greater muscle growth than training each muscle just once per week as you do in a bro split. In fact, as stated in a further meta-analysis by Greg Nuckols, subjects training at a higher frequency grew 38% faster than those training at a lower frequency, and a similar result was found for upper body strength gains as well, which is likely due to higher training frequencies not only being able to better optimize the protein synthesis response throughout the week, but also enabling you to perform higher quality sets. For example, if you do 16 sets of chest per week with 4 exercises using a bro split, you would start to fatigue after your first exercise and your performance would decrease from then on. Whereas if you were to split that into 2 workouts per week, for example as part of your push days, then you'd be able to perform those exercises with better quality since you're not doing as much volume all at once. Thus, you can see how the bro split may not be the best option for these reasons, and opting for a split that instead trains each muscle at least twice per week is likely optimal. But now moving forward, as for which of these splits is best for you, it depends on a variety of factors but mainly on your training experience. For example, if you're a beginner and just getting started in the gym, then I'd recommend the full body workout split 2 to 3 times per week, where within each workout you use mainly compound exercises to hit every muscle. And the reason being is because as a beginner, your primary goal should be to master the main movements in the gym by improving your motor learning, coordination, and building up a base level of strength and endurance without causing excessive muscle damage. And since a full body training split enables you to perform these movements more frequently when compared to other splits, you're able to master them more effectively and build a solid base of strength faster than you would otherwise. In fact, this 2018 paper by Ochi and colleagues found that training each muscle 3 times per week as you do in a full body split was not only more effective at improving strength in untrained individuals when compared to lower training frequencies, but it also reduced their rate of perceived exertion, meaning that they felt their workouts were easier and they were able to recover faster, despite actually performing the same amount of volume as the lower frequency group, which is a major bonus as a beginner since you're more prone to muscle damage, fatigue, and soreness from your workouts. However, despite the various benefits of full body workouts, given the positive relationship between volume and muscle growth, as you gain more experience, you're inevitably going to have to increase volume in order to further progress at the optimal rate. And although you could simply continue increasing the volume of your full body workouts, there will come a point where your workouts just become too long and fatiguing to complete. And in fact, based on research in rats at least, there may be an upper limit to the number of sets you can do per muscle in a single workout before its benefit on muscle protein synthesis plateaus. Although the exact number is not clear, it does imply that once we go above a certain threshold of workout volume, splitting it into separate workouts throughout the week should produce greater muscle growth than performing it all in a single workout. Hence why I'd recommend that once your progress stalls with the full body split, switch to a 4-day upper lower split or something similar such that you have more training days to fit in extra volume. And then as you gain even more experience, it can be wise and possibly more enjoyable for you to switch to a 5-day routine or a 6-day push-pull leg split or something similar to once again fit in extra volume as needed to continue progressing without causing your workouts to be excessively long. But as you can see, although some routines have various advantages over others, there really isn't a best workout split. Your training routine should be simply viewed as a tool to organize your workout volume in a way that is most enjoyable and most practical for you. Whether it's with a bro split like I started out with, one of the alternatives I mentioned, or something completely different, just know that workout volume and consistency are the more important factors. So focus mainly on those 2 variables and you will see positive results regardless of the workout split you use. And that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you so much.
So that's a really good breakdown. I love like the little graphic where it takes all the exercises and then like splits them over to one side. That is sort of what we're talking about when we're talking about training volume. Now, this can be done with stabilization exercises, it can be done with strength exercises, and it can be done with power exercises. All of these are going to be appropriate. You know, it just depends on sort of how you're laying it out for what your client's goals are and how it fits in their schedule and, you know, kind of what they enjoy too, you know. Like I was noticing, I had kind of a revelation somewhat recently. I used to do like upper body in the beginning of the week, lower body, and then like I used to go like upper, lower, upper, lower. But I found that like having my lower body days just before ultimate was kind of killing me on the field. And so I just flipped them and I went like lower, upper instead. And that has made all the difference. Like that made a huge difference in like my week and my energy and things like that. So, you know, you guys are going to find that the more you sort of adjust your volume around and kind of play with it and tweak it and stuff here and there, you're going to find what works best for you and what works best for your clients. And, you know, as long as you're sort of following the general idea of like 10 to 20 sets per week and then try to hit your muscles about twice per week, if you can do both those things, you're going to be in a really good spot. So if your client's in the stabilization level, total body stabilization exercises are appropriate. That's going to be things like a ball squat curl to press, or a maybe like a walking lunge with a lateral raise, right? Or, you know, a step up to shoulder press, you know, like whatever, where you're using like a combination of like one muscle plus another. You know, one of my favorite ones that's a little bit total body is like a floor bridge to chest press. Love to get a little bit of extra core work in there and have my clients get like a little bit of like you know, a little bit of glute work while they're still working on their upper body stuff, because we can always use more glute work, you know. So there she goes, right? She's going to get into that bridge and then do her chest press. And you know, she's doing this in an isometric hold. She could also do this for repetitions, right? Like I could have, like when her dumbbells are up here, she could drop her hips down and bring them back up, right? Doesn't have to move everything simultaneously. We could do it in parts, but that's a total body exercise, right? There's chest stabilization exercises for your chest stuff. That's going to be all of the sort of unstable chest versions. You can see if we go to those exercise checklists that I always give you guys. That's not where I keep it. You know, your chest stuff, things like the ball dumbbell chest press, or even push-ups actually count, because you can put your hands on a ball during a push-up and suddenly it becomes very unstable. Standing cable chest press. Anytime you're using the cable machine, it's probably a stabilization exercise for the most part, just because it's a very, you know, the cable sort of like pulls against you if you use a lot of core strength to kind of stabilize. So all of these versions, tricep stabilization, leg stabilization, these are all of our foundational exercises. They are going to teach us how to do pressing and pulling and pushing, or I'm sorry, pushing and pulling and pressing, and like leg exercise. It's going to teach us how to do squats and hinges, all the main key types of movements that we see in the sort of heavier versions of things later on, right? If we think of the bench press as the king of chest exercises, well, a stability ball chest press will teach us how to stabilize during that bench press. If we think of a pull-up as the king of upper back exercises, a kneeling cable row is going to teach you, or a kneeling cable pull down is going to teach your client how to do a proper, you know, sort of pull-up. If you think of the squat as the king of leg exercises, a Bosu ball prisoner squat is going to teach you how to do that. So these are exercises that involve unstable environments that focus on training your clients for stability. So again, the way we make them harder is we make them more unstable through, you know, either doing like a single leg version or a staggered stance version, or alternating arms, or, you know, a single arm, or a single arm with rotation, you know, whatever version that looks like. Now in the strength level, you're going to do the exact same thing. It's just sort of resistance versions, right? So if we pull up, like, you know, let's say I've got a client in like month 1, month 2, and month 3 here, right? And let's say I'm going to do like a total body exercise. You know, month 1 is going to be stabilization. Month 2 is going to be strength. And month 3 is going to be power, right? For my total body exercise, maybe I do like a ball, squat, curl to press, right? That's a great example of like a full body stabilization exercise. Well, in the strength version, I'm just going to do a dumbbell squat, curl to press, which means that I've got both legs on the ground. I'm just not against a ball, so that I'm not wiggling around at all, right? And there we go. There's my sort of total body version of that. So strength movements are, you know, the same types of exercises. They are just going to be in stable environments. So the primary goal here is to increase force production. How do we make stuff harder in the strength level? Well, yeah, we just make it heavier. You know, I want you lifting 5, then 10, then 20, then 30, then 40 pounds. You know, like I want to keep going up with the weight. That's the idea here. So these are very stable environments using heavy resistance training. These need to be exercises where you can sort of tack a lot of weight on. This is why the barbell is so popular. It's why it's my favorite version of everything. You know, like I love dumbbells and stuff. I really do. But the barbell is sort of one of the best ways to really be able to throw a lot of weight on. If you're trying to improve like your weight training, the barbell is one of your best tools for that, because it's very, very, very stable and evenly distributed between, you know, both arms and both legs and things like that. So it's very easy to make it heavier, right? So bench press, seated row, barbell squat, all of those are going to be really good examples of strength versions, right? And then let's say my client's in the power level, right? Well, then I'm going to choose resistance power exercises. Now you will notice my list here is a little bit short, right? We went Our exercises that were appropriate for stabilization and for strength were total body, chest, back, shoulders, biceps, triceps, legs. The only thing you're going to notice about the power level here is that we do not do biceps or triceps. There are no sort of single joint movements for the power side of things. So we're choosing resistance power exercises. That's either going to be total body, chest, back, shoulders, or just simply legs there. So if we say this is total body, chest, back, shoulders, biceps, right? So my total body power exercise might be something like a burpee, right? I go down into a push-up, I come up into a squat, and then I do like a squat jump, right? And I go all the way down and all the way back up. That's a really great total body power exercise, right? Now, for a stabilization exercise, maybe it's a ball, stability ball. Actually, no, we'll do push-ups, hands on a ball, right? And then for my chest strength, we'll go with the bench press, right? And then here we'll go with the medicine ball, chest pass, right? So we'd be explosive. And then for my upper back, maybe this is like a bent over, single leg bent over row. So I'm balancing on one leg while I'm doing that row. And then over here, it's just a classic, like, you know, barbell bent over row. And then over here, it is something explosive, maybe like a medicine ball slam, right? Where I'm throwing that ball really explosively down onto the floor. For my shoulders, single leg shoulder press. For my shoulders in the strength level, we'll go military press. And for the power level, let's go with like a push press, right? That explosive sort of dumbbell jerk there, right? Biceps, single leg bicep curl. And then we would just do maybe like a cable curl. Tricep, and then NA, right? This does not apply to power. We don't have tricep stuff for the power level. Over here, we'll go with a stability ball skull crusher. And then over here, we'll go with a cable press down. And then again, this is NA. And for the legs, you know, maybe that's a single leg Romanian deadlift. There's a regular deadlift, right? And then over here, you know, for my power stuff, it's like a box jump, right? So there we go, right? If I have, like, if my client's workout looks something kind of like this, 3 days per week, right? For the stabilization side of things, 3 days per week for the strength side, you know, and I had them doing like 4 sets of everything. That's going to be 12 total sets per body part per week. And he's going to get really good at these particular movements, right? And then I could, you know, this could very much be, let's say I put a row above this. Maybe this is like workout A, you know, this is what he does on Mondays. So this is like Mondays for his first month. This is Mondays for his second month. And this is Mondays for his third month. And then I could literally just copy this list right here, go over here, and then just switch out all these exercises. I follow the exact same scheme, and then suddenly it becomes my workout B. And I do the exact same thing again, lay that out, and that's my workout C. So I pick a new total body exercise, you know, for this is Monday, Wednesday, right? And I just do different versions. I just plug it in. So that's one way that I can do this. That's the total body approach. Now, I will say, like, total body works really well in the stabilization level, works pretty well on the power level. And it can work really well in the strength endurance level. But when it comes to like hypertrophy and max strength for most of like your adult clients who are really trying to put on size and things like that, I think you're going to be much better off doing like a little bit of isolation work, where you're hitting each muscle sort of specifically 2 days per week. My favorite for strength and hypertrophy, my favorite workouts for those are going to be an upper lower split. Like I said, for difficulty, you're going to progress things going up and down the OPT model. Maybe it's like, we were talking about general stabilization, strength, and power, but there are lots of different versions of strength. You could have like you could be in strength. You could move through all 5 phases of the OPT model. In fact, I always recommend that for new students. I recommend that you guys take yourself through, sort of 5 months of this, do really dedicated stabilization work for a month, then do really dedicated strength endurance work, really dedicated hypertrophy, max strength, and power, because that's going to kind of sharpen you and kind of get used to using these different phases of the OPT model. Not every client's going to need max strength. Not every client's going to need strength endurance. Definitely not every client's going to need power. Power is the one that's probably the most rare. But you need to know how to incorporate them with any client should it be appropriate. So I always recommend doing that. So here's how we increase that difficulty. Like I said, in the stabilization level, how do we make stuff harder? We make it more unstable. Stability is the tool that we use to make things harder. Strength level, how do we make it harder? Resistance is the tool that we make them, make it heavier, right? And in power, it's resistance and or speed. So yeah, you can get a little heavier in the power level, but you can also just try to move very explosively. So like I said, we know that strength training has a lot of benefits for our youth clients. Everything from bone mineral density to body composition to psychology to reducing our risk of injury. And so if we can get our youth clients to engage in strength training about 2 to 3 days per week, with a little bit of rest in between each day, for anywhere from 1 to 3 sets of, it says 3 down here, because that's like if you're doing really explosive like SAQ stuff, but generally like higher repetitions. I honestly like 12 to 15 for most of my youths. And then we're going to use the OPT template and the OPT model to sort of progress and regress things. Any questions on any of that before I kind of give you one more example here? Feeling good? The progression and the training split stuff is clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You gonna open up? Oh my God, is it behind me? Oh my God, it's open. I was blocking it with my Zoom stuff. Got it. Okay. All right, let's take a look right here. So here is an example total body routine, kind of similar to the one I just kind of built earlier for our stabilization level client. So here's Ethan again, the same kid we've been kind of working with. And you can see here, we did kind of an interesting thing with the reps. You'll notice I went like single-sided exercises to 2-sided exercise, like single, two, single, two, single. Just did that because it was kind of fun, like you don't have to do that, but I figured like if I'm going to get complicated with the reps, at least I'll have somewhat of a pattern so it would be easy to follow. So this is clearly set up as vertical loading. You're going to perform 1 set of each exercise and then move on to the next exercise until you get to the end of the circuit and then repeat. So this is a circuit with some rest in between. So what's going to happen is he's going to do a step up to balance, curl to press, right? And so what that's going to look like is he's going to be on a step. Remember, this is our stabilization routine, right? So he's going to do the step, do a bicep curl, do a shoulder press, and then bring it back down. That is our total body stabilization exercise. You'll notice he switched legs in between, right? That's his left. And now he's going to go, well, actually, he only did 2 reps, but so he goes with his right, and then he's going to switch to his left. There you go, right? So there's total body. So because that's single-sided exercise, he's going to do 8 reps each. That's close to 16, which is going to fit with the rest of our rep scheme. He'll take 30 seconds of rest and then move on to push-ups, which you can see here, right? The classic push-up. And he's going to do that for a 4-2-1 tempo. This guy's kind of moving at a medium tempo, but I would want my client to go down for 4, hold the bottom for 2, and then come back up for 1. Single leg bent over row. We're going to have him do 8 repetitions with each leg here. Out of here. So you see, he's going to grab some friggin' big, heavy dumbbells. Oh, it's Joel Seedman. Of course it is. This is the unstable king here. So he's doing a single leg version, sort of bent over row there. Really great for, unstable versions of that sort of rowing action. For his shoulders, we're going to do ball combo number 1. So that's going to be that YTA. So Y, and then go into a T. And then lastly, thumbs up and go into an A. Right? So Y, T, A. Single leg hammer curls, nothing fancy there. That's about as simple as it gets. Oop. And then a stability ball skull crusher. Rolling it out, unstable tricep exercise. Right. And then lastly, a single leg squat touchdown. You guys remember that one from yesterday. And that's our unstable leg exercise. So there you go. So if he did 3 sets of this, and we did this 3 days per week, that's going to be 9 sets, pretty close to 10. I'd say like maybe one day he does like 4 sets. I might even like goof around with the volume a little bit. If this were actually my client, like let's say this is, let's say this is like workout A, maybe it's like 3 sets of, we're going for about 15. Workout B would maybe 3 sets of like, or 4 sets of 12. And then workout C might be like 3 sets of 20, and there we go. Now I've hit my 10 sets per week. But honestly, I mean, if this is a beginning client, 9 sets isn't all that bad. Plus you get some total body exercises in here, kind of making up for that training volume. So maybe 9 is just fine. We just do this 3 days per week. Now, let's say my client's in month 2. So the most appropriate for a youth client is going to be that strength endurance phase, right? So I don't want to dive too far into phases today. We're going to get into phases tomorrow. But if we look at, strength endurance, it's got some special rules in there. Strength endurance is all about, supersetting. It's sort of easing its way out of stabilization. It's going to superset the strength stuff with the stabilization stuff. So we're going to be complicated, and we're going to do sort of superset techniques here. You can see I'm going to do this floor dumbbell chest press, which is very much a stable chest exercise, right? That's a strength level chest exercise if he ever does it. Right, so he's going to go down and come right back up. And then we're going to pair that with those push-ups from earlier, right? So now we're pairing, immediately we go from the chest press right back into the push-ups, right? And he was doing the chest for a 2-0-2 tempo and the push-ups for a 4-2-1 tempo. That is going to burn like crazy. 0 seconds of rest after the one, immediately rolling into the next, right? So that's 3 sets there. 8 repetitions each for a total of 16, which fits pretty well with what we were doing before. And it is very much aerobic, which is going to work well with our youth clients, right? We got a regular bent over row, and then we're going to pair that with that single leg bent over row we talked about, right? So there's the classic bent over row. And then we go right back into, that unstable one that we talked about. So it's like, you get to lift heavy for 8 repetitions, and then you got to lift relatively light for the remaining 4 repetitions, or for the remaining 8 repetitions on the stabilization side, right? So you can see we went with that regular dumbbell scaption into that combo number 1, and then we went with like a barbell deadlift, into the single leg squat touchdown, because they're very similar biomechanically. So that's our sort of superset side of things, and that's what we're going to do in the strength endurance level. And then power is pretty simple, right? We can see we're going to perform this as an actual circuit, no rest in between. We're going to start with our total body power, which is going to be things like burpees. Love burpees. Plyo push-ups. So now that our client is, they've been doing 2 months of push-ups, getting pretty good at it. Right now, we're going to be a little explosive, right? We're going to get a little bit of air on that push. I will say she's taking a little pause at the bottom. I wouldn't do that personally. Medicine ball slam. There's our upper back exercise. There's a little bit of legs in there, by the way. Push press. There's our shoulder exercise. She's getting a little dip in the knees. She's going to drive that up. Dip, drive. And then a box jump. There's our explosive leg exercise. And there we go, right? So again, if I am moving my client through a progression of 3 months of training, that's sort of what it looks like. And then you saw that we did eliminate, we got rid of the biceps and the triceps in power. For the record, if you guys want to have bicep and tricep training for power level clients, you just do strength versions, and that's about it, guys. Oh, we lost a bay. Thomas's, how you doing?
Doing well.
Love it. All right. All right. So those are sort of our example routines. Yeah, if you guys don't have any questions, I'll go ahead and kill the recording here.